What's going on, Tamers? Editor Varney interjecting here. Sorry for the crazy here. We're editing. Adrian encountered some problems while he was recording this video, so just wanted to give you all that heads up before. I would have left the video up, but it is very glitchy, very laggy. Figured it just might not be a good look for us, so instead I blocked out his video, put a picture of his favorite Digimon up there, so you get to look at Vmon the whole time. And yeah, just figured I'd give you guys that heads up. We will be working on that going forward. This is a first-time episode of the series, hopefully in what will be a weekly series. So it's growing pains, but you know, we're learning as we're going. So we appreciate your patience and we appreciate you guys watching the video. Anyways, I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. Let's get on to the video.
What is up, Squared Nation? Welcome back to... Hold on. Oh, we're not doing that anymore? Okay, my bad. What is up, Tamers? Welcome back to DigiGuard United. My name is Adrian, and today we're going to be going over the Tamers Battle League Season 2, Week 10, Top 4. As you can see in this gorgeous graphic provided by our fearless leader, Varney, you can see the variety that we had in the top 4. Total of 16 players is a really good turnout, especially for a Friday night, so just keep it coming. So we're going to go over the decks and see exactly where we're at. Might be some interesting stuff going on here as I see this graphic here. I wasn't expecting to see a Numemon on top so quickly, but let's get right into it. Let me go ahead and fix this for you guys here. And as you can see, these are our top 4. We had Walter L, Adachi, Dan, shout out to Dan, and we had Pyro0228 playing the Melga. Let's go ahead and jump into our 4th place finish, which is this Numemon deck. Now, just looking at this face value is a very control aspect to it. A lot of different Floodgate rookies, security rookies, Ukamon being able to go ahead and promote from raising to gain you that memory and go ahead and turbo through your eggs is really nice. Just gives you a nice little board presence there if you want to go wide and stay down low. But obviously your bread and butter is going to be your Numemons here. Your Numemons all the way up the line from Numemon all the way up to Platinum Numemon here. I do like that Venusmon tech. It's really nice. Venusmon's such a strong mega. Being able to essentially stun your opponent and just like not allow them to play the game is really good. What else do we have here? Then you got your bombs. You got Merciful Mode, which I think is a really good removal on legs in the format right now. 15k DP, being able to go ahead and pop one of your opponent's Digimon on a Digivolution, but also target 10 cards from their trash and put them down to the bottom of their deck. A lot of decks right now, especially your opponent's decks, are playing with their trash as another resource, so being able to disrupt that is really nice, especially with all these purple decks running around that just utilize their trash very effectively. Not to mention, when your turn passes back to you, you're going to essentially kill him on the top of the stack and burn one of your opponent's security, and then you're just going to have one of your megas out. So really good card. I love Merciful Mode. Being able to Digivolve over every color except black is also really good too, because it's just like a generic good card that you can use in essentially any strategy. Death X, you know, for your decks that go wide, being able to go ahead and play this for a reduced cost and just control the board that way. You can see the control aspect here. You want to be able to do that as much as possible. And then Ruin Mode probably being one of the best cards in the game. That blanket negative 5k effect, essentially time walking your opponent where they can't promote anything lower than an ultimate most of the time, and they can't just play anything out of hand like a searcher because it's just essentially going to die. So you're basically saying you don't get to play this turn, just pass back to me and we'll go from there. And then Protoform. Protoform's a really interesting card. It's growing on me a bit, but this is the perfect strategy for Protoform because you're not focusing too heavily on X Digivolution, like there's no cool boys or anything like that. So this is a perfect scenario for Protoform because it does reduce your Digivolution, but it also gives you that nice protection in the inheritable. If your stack gets removed, you do get that pseudo recovery with this card going back to the stack and then essentially getting back to your hand after it's checked again. Just being able to recycle the ability of that. It's just really nice. I think it's a really good card. This is the perfect deck that wants to do that, though, because you're not, like I said, you're not focusing heavily on the X Digivolutions with the X antibody lines, but you want to be able to cheat stuff out for a little bit cheaper. So this is a nice looking control list. I would love to see this in action. So I got to watch some of the replays there in the Discord and see where it's at. But yeah, this was our 4th place finish. Shout out to my man Martin L. Was that his name? Walter L. Sorry, Walter L. Shout out to Walter. Let's go into our 3rd place finish. We have Adachi here playing Machine Dramon. I've played against Machine Dramon a handful of times, and every time I've played against Machine Dramon, it has been extremely annoying. This deck is very oppressive. I don't know. Oppressive might be too strong of a word, but basically, if I can explain it, playing against Machine Dramon is interesting because you have to worry about what they're doing retroactively to what you want to do. Digimon is very your turn, my turn, but when you're playing against a deck like Machine Dramon, you have to be able to answer your opponent's progression with not only your own progression, but you have to do it in a way where it's going to answer their threats efficiently. And what I mean by that is, if you just let Machine Dramon do what it wants to do and you completely ignore what's going on, you're gonna lose. The effect of being able to redirect stuff, having multiple layers of protection, and just a bunch of really good inheritables, whether it's piercing or blocker or reboot or de-digivolve, this is basically like the Swiss Army knife of Digimon decks. Chaos Dramon X is gonna get basically all the effects in the inheritables, all the effects in the stack, especially if it's obviously if it's a machinish cyborg, you're gonna do that. But you just have multiple avenues of doing things. You have stun here with suspension. You have being able to attack unsuspended Digimon as long as you're a Dragonkin. Tamer removal, piercing, blocker or reboot, blocker, de-digivolve. Like I said, it's endless. There's just so many different effects that you can proc off with a stack, and being able to facilitate your trash while also playing your Machine Dramons is really nice. You have a couple search cards here and some Digivolution reduction. It's just really solid. I hate playing against Machine Dramon just because it's like you have to play a little bit differently. You have to play weird. You can't just do what you want to do. You kind of have to do what your opponent allows you to do, which is never fun because, you know, what's the point? You want to play the game that you want to play, but you do have to be careful. You can't let them get out of control, because what happens is if they get established before you can even respond to it, it's just not going to be a fun time. So, yeah, shout out to Adachi for third place finish with Machine Dramon. Really strong deck, in my opinion. You're probably going to see a lot more of this guy moving forward. Our second place finish, our very own, shout out to Dan, playing Dark Masters or Pokemon here. Yeah, I mean, I played against Dan at locals against this deck, and it's really strong. I mean, a Pokemon is a really strong card. Being able to just feed itself sources from trash and give itself really strong inheritables like reboot, piercing, blocker, and retaliation, as well as that alternative win condition of milling out your opponent. It's just a recipe for destruction. I can totally see why this card's going to 1. It's a very strong card, 15k body, that's nothing to sneeze at. Plus, you have to sit there and just wait until they mill you out. So it's like, you know, it's death by 1,000 cuts, but in the worst way possible, because they can do it 2 ways. I like the Magnadramon tech, that blanket security -1. There's a lot of different effects right now that rely on your Digimon being suspended, like when attackings or just inheritables that offer protection and unsuspension. And obviously, if you want to do that, you have to be able to attack. So sometimes just burning an attack just to get sideways sucks when you don't have security attack because you're not doing anything. And you also have to be careful because a Pokemon can have a blocker inheritable, so you're just giving your bodies up just to turn sideways to be able to activate effects. Like, I was playing against this, and I had to turn sideways with my Weregarurumon just so I can go up into Melga X to be able to unsuspend and bounce a card. It's not an efficient play, but it's something that I had to do because I had to remove a piece off of his board, and I had to set up and establish a blocker. I mean, the Pokemon just got rid of it next turn anyway, but that was just one of my plays that I had to make. So I love seeing that. I love the scatter mode here, being able to trash and draw. You're facilitating your trash with cards like, you know, Analog Youth and your Demi Miramon eggs, because you want your targets in trash to be able to go into a Pokemon for reduced cost. Uber, I love Uber, very underrated card, is very good. Good Floodgate here with Psychmon, and then just this package. I hate this package. These 2 cards right here. I could totally understand. I could totally see why they're going to 1. They're just so overplayed. They're so overpowered. They're just really good cards. You can kind of just splash them in anywhere, and yeah, I mean, you know, they're getting limited for a reason, so might as well enjoy them while you can. But come March 1st, you better have alternatives for it. I don't know where this deck goes post ban list. I'm sure if there's a way to be able to turbo out or efficiently search your Apocalypse. Somebody will figure it out. But yeah, I mean, this deck is super strong. Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting seeing like the lines and seeing how everything is played. I don't experience much of how decks are played through like videos and tournaments and stuff like that. It's really just sitting across the table and playing against them and learning the hard way. So it was very refreshing seeing how this deck works. So shout out to Dan for his second place finish. And last but not least, we're gonna get into Metal Garurumon here. Now, this is the deck that I played when I was at locals, but I was focusing more on the purple aspect of it, which in hindsight is probably wrong, especially moving into March 1st. I think blue just naturally is just better because you kind of just want to do your OTK stuff, and I think blue is the more aggressive version of this deck. It's nice having the purple cards, but I feel like sometimes we focus too much on the purple with all the trashing effects just to set up the trash, and you're just kind of getting away from the strategy. Plus, there's a lot of expensive stuff in this deck if you're not playing a Memory Tamer, which obviously he's not here. So, pretty standard, pretty solid. I'm surprised no BT5 Gabumon. You know, on-play search for 3 memory, grabbing an Omnimon and another piece is really good. That might change going into March 1st. But this is pretty standard. I love the new Gabumon and I love the new Garurumon from BT15. I think they're very good cards. Being able to make yourself a blocker and have that when attacking draw inheritable is super nice. Playing a mat for a reduced cost of 3, essentially making this guy free, is really good on Digivolve. So that's really nice there. Garurumon inheritable when attacking draw 1, not once per turn, is really strong. Yeah, I mean, this is solid. I do love these ratios here, 2 and 2. I was focusing more on the purple, like I said, so I didn't play the original X antibody Garurumon here. But I could see moving forward making an argument for 2 and 2, just because that free on suspend is nice. Being able to bounce back at level 4 is also good, and it digivolves for 0 on a Garurumon. Whereas this digivolves for 1, it does unsuspend by trashing 2, which is nice, but it also does have a really sick inheritables when you attack with a Mega, trash 1 to unsuspend. That's really good, so I guess you want to pick your poison here, but I think 2 and 2 split is the correct number. Yeah, I think that's the right way of doing it. Garurumon here, when attacking trash 1 to unsuspend, really strong. Really good card, and then the inheritable of being able to pop a 4 or less by trashing a card is also really good. Garurumon Ace. Out the box, I didn't think this card was that great, but in testing and in playing, it is really good. Being able to lock your opponent, and I'm going to call it lock instead of stun, because essentially what you're doing is you're locking them out of anything. They can't suspend, they can't block, they can't attack. And that's really nice, because it essentially gives you like a turn. You know, it gives you protection in a way, but we talked about it earlier. There's a lot of effects that rely on your cards being suspended, and for not being able to suspend something to proc an effect can be detrimental, especially if it's a really good inheritable, or just you need to turn your card sideways to be able to digivolve to unsuspend. Very similar to what this deck wants to do. So just being able to freeze your opponent or lock your opponent out of an attack or a block is really nice too. And then of course your promo one of this card's just really good. I like seeing Sagittarius mode here as a bridge. Being able to bounce back 2 floodgates is also really good, and it does have the protection and the inheritable, so that's nice. Yeah, this is pretty solid. This is a pretty solid ultimate lineup. I'd probably try and squeeze one more of the Ace in there. I don't know if I'd play the Sagittarius mode. I do like it, but I don't know if I would play it. Let me see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Yeah, I mean, I'm a 12, 10, 8, 6 guy, so once you start getting into these weird ratios here with odd numbers, I start to get my OCD starts to kick in a little bit, but he got first place, so it worked for him. On to our Megas. 2 Melga from BT15, 2 Melga X, and 2 Melga Ace. Yeah, this is fine. I personally do like playing 1 EX5 Melga just to have that defensive option just in case I need it. And this guy's just such an expensive Digivolution for 4. But yeah, I mean, this is what you want. This card's great. Essentially just a free Digivolve by trashing 3 cards in hand. And when attacking, you get to blow up a card on your opponent's side of the board with the lowest, I think, level. But being able to turn a Metal Garurumon sideways so you can go ahead and X Digivolve for 1 and then unsuspend and get all the effects that way, is really strong in my opinion. This is a good mega lineup. I tried to squeeze in an EX5, but this is good. You can't go wrong. Obviously, your finishing combo here, this is just so good. Blitz Omni into Omni X is just busted. And this is what we talked about earlier. I'm going to skip ahead to the X antibodies. When you're playing a heavily focused X Digivolution strategy, this is definitely the ratio that you want. I think a 2-1 is what you want because you want to be able to proc the inheritable on the original X antibody, allowing you to Digivolve. So 9 times out of 10, when you're going into your Blitz Omni combo, you're passing turn on that Digivolution because you want to unsuspend and Blitz, right? So you're very rarely going to hard Digivolve into a Blitz Omni to stick Protoform underneath it to go into X. That's not going to happen very often. So we want to swing, get the inheritable here, go into Omni X, trash 1, look at the security, trash 1, bounce something back to the bottom of the deck. It's just, this is what you want. So like if you're focusing heavily on the X antibody strategy, this is where you want to go. 2 Cool Bulls, I think, is the perfect number. It's a cheap tamer. It's allowing you to search, but it's allowing you also to gain memory and draw cards as you Digivolve up your X stack. Matt's really good. Another way of gaining memory here. I could kind of see a world where memory tamers kind of get pushed out just because they're so expensive to play F4 memory, but that's a conversation for a podcast, not for this. Mental training and blue memory boost. I learned the hard way that mental training is the better card. It might be a regional local thing, but I run into more memory blockers than I do Digivolution reduction blockers. So in my opinion, mental training is better than blue memory boost, especially because it costs 1 less, but it also allows you to add a blue card as opposed to a blue Digimon. So you're gonna whiff on maybe a handful of cards here, but you're essentially going to grab, I would say, like 85 to 90% of your deck. And also, a reduction in Digivolution is really important because a lot of these Digivolutions are expensive. There's going to be times where you just straight up Digivolve from Garurumon X into Garurumon X. You're not going to have the Garurumon to go into it. And this is a Digivolution for 4. So being able to reduce that by 2 is really nice. Hindsight memory boost does kind of give you the same thing because you could delay to gain the 2 memory and then use the memory however you want. But like I said, memory blockers are more prevalent in my area, so I'm going to run into some issues with like Gazimons and stuff like that, you know. So this, you can't go wrong with either or, but if you're going to play the more efficient card, it's going to be mental training. And then of course your Bukamon egg, if this is changing March 1st, you're probably just going to go down to, I would say, BT5 Gabu or BT15 Gabu at 4, and then just 1 Bukamon for, you know, just consistency purposes, and that's what you're allowed to play. So, yeah, just make sure, if you're going to play this deck post March 1st, make sure you have protection when you swing with your big stack. The last thing you want is to just get blown up in there. And remember, these guys are going to 1. So you're going to have you want your alpha stack to have these versions of the X antibody in them. This X antibody Gabumon doesn't have an inheritable. The Garurumon does for the protection, but you have to remove 2 sources of the same level as opposed to the trash effect here. So you definitely want your alpha stack to include these guys, but being one-ofs, you know, good luck essentially. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I really can't think of much more other than just doing more research preemptively and maybe experiencing some gameplay when it comes to these top 4 decks. But let me know in the comments down below. Do you guys prefer talking about the top 4, or do you want to focus more heavily on just the first place finishing decks? I prefer talking about variety, so I enjoy talking about the top 4, but we'll grow with this together. This is our first video in this segment, and I want to be able to check off all the boxes. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and we'll see you guys in the next video.